So, on this first day of April, I want to offer each of you a warm spring welcome to today's webinar sponsored by us, the Boston branch of the Anthroposophical Society. As we approach Easter, we wanted to use this time tonight to help each of us prepare for an inner experience of Easter. For this reason, we invited Neill Reilly, that is, a proper Irishman whose ancestors knew of Christ's event upon Golgotha long before the missionaries even arrived. After attending parochial schools while growing up, Neill headed off to Bowdoin College in Maine to run on their track team. But while there, he happened to ask a question of a professor, Fritz Kohn, who responded by introducing Neill to anthroposophy. At least that's how I heard the story. Neill went to Bowdoin from Garden City Waldorf School, right? I think, where, I'm sorry, and then he returned to teach English there for about 7 years, and then had this strange calling from maybe Ahriman to go enter the field of finance, where he's enjoyed quite a successful second career. Now, I got to know Neill through a study group that he has led for centuries, well, maybe perhaps decades. Through these study groups, I have learned much, including Neill's most spoken word, astonishing. As an April 1st offering, I will give to anyone a dime for every occurrence this word you hear from him spoken tonight. That is, if you can accurately tell me how many times he used it. So, Neill is author of The Mystery and Magnificence of Mary in Paintings and Poems. Another book, Look at What We Can Become. And most recently, The Marian Way of Heart Knowledge. And he has led deeply moving study groups, as I said, for decades. So, Neill, before I turn this over to you, I want to read the fourth panel of the Foundation Stone meditation, which I typically get to read at the closing of our study group that I participate in on Tuesday nights. And before I do that, I just also want to mention that at noon this Friday, that's Good Friday, which also happens to be the birth and death day of Raphael, the Anthroposophical Society in America is hosting my namesake, Andrew Wolpert, who's going to speak on the human form divine. This will be an online art history lecture about Raphael and Steiner's last address. I have heard Andrew Wolpert on several occasions, so I'm going to say you do not want to miss this online talk. And also put in your calendars right now, April 12th at 2 o'clock Eastern Time, we will have Dr. Alice Barton in a return visit, and again, an art history talk, and this time on Botticelli and Easter. So now I'll give Ernst Katz's translation, since I've never done that one. At the turning point of time came the cosmic spirit light into earthly stream of being. Night darkness had reached its power's end. Light, bright as day, rayed forth in human souls. Light that gives warmth to simple hearts of shepherds. Light that enlightens the wise heads of kings. Well, let's see here. Light divine, Christ's Son, give warmth to our hearts, enlighten our heads, that good may become. What from our hearts we are founding, what from our heads we shall guide with our purposeful willing. So Neill joins us from Long Island to New York, and I turn it over to you now, my good friend Neill.
Thank you, Andrew. Very kind of you. One slight modification. After going to the Waldorf Institute, I taught for 5 years at the Kimberton Waldorf School and then went to the Garden City. No problem. It's not going to bother anyone. No problem. So thank you, everyone, for attending tonight in this Holy Week, this sacred time. It leads up to Good Friday, the mystery of Golgotha. And I think that we'll go through this, and at the end, we'll ask questions and we'll try to understand more and more of this amazing. And I'm going to try to not use certain words. So it's going to be hard for me though. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share, and I'm going to send that request. The sharing is not turned on, and now I'm going to have share. And can everyone see?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet, Neill.
Okay.
Go ahead. No, try again. Stop
Um,
sharing and try again. I don't think the permissions had gone through when you first hit it.
okay. Share. And here we go.
Now we got it.
Cool. Wait a minute. I don't know what that is. System private window picker. Okay. All right. So everyone, I assume, can see this beautiful Fra Angelico.
Yes, we can.
Great. So great title, Saint Dominic adoring the crucifixion. So this is a detail. There's a full picture, which is beautiful at San Marco. You would see Saint Dominic and the crucifixion scene. But I think this particular aspect of this is so beautiful. And this is after Christ has died, after he said the famous words, "It is accomplished." Some people have translated, "It is finished." There are multiple different ways of translating it, but I tend towards "it is accomplished." And this is very important in this theme that Dr. Steiner talks about constantly, the mystery of Golgotha. And then he has this wonderful phrase, the turning point of time. It's an explicit understanding of that this is the most important event in humanity and for the evolution of the earth. So we're lucky to have Dr. Steiner help us try to understand this. So for Dr. Steiner, the mystery of Golgotha was an all-inclusive term, not just the passion and the crucifixion. It refers back to and encompasses creation, the incarnation, and looks forward to the resurrection and the second coming. Most importantly, the mystery of Golgotha culminates in the resurrection, the victory over death. For Dr. Steiner, the resurrection is not just a historic event, it's ongoing. Hence the important phrase, the turning point of time. The use of the present participle is apt. For Dr. Steiner, words could be experienced. I am with you until the end of time. Matthew 28:20. This is not a nice poetic turn of phrase. It's a spiritual fact. All of history leads up to the resurrection and flows forward from it. This, I think, is a wonderful, wonderful painting by James Tissot, the resurrection. And look at how the Christ being is defying gravity. He's floating, and there's light. He's conquered death. And the soldiers on the ground are in this unusual state of being almost thrown back by this incredible manifestation. And Tissot is a fascinating person. He was a very successful French artist who made a lot of money painting beautiful women in their finery. And then he went to church once, and he could feel the importance of Christ for people who were in suffering. He did a complete change of his life, and he stopped his very lucrative business, and he went to Israel because he realized that everyone painted as if they were in Florence or in Dresden or in England, and he wanted to get the topography down. So he spent time in Israel just studying the land to make sure he would get it right. And from then on, most of his paintings, if not all, were concerned with Christ. So this is very important. Dr. Steiner's anthroposophy is Christ-centric. He declared the core mission of anthroposophy is to prepare for the second coming of Christ, not in the physical, but in the spiritual, the etheric. He had a historical perspective that follows from ancient times into the present. One of his central themes is the evolving history of consciousness. In his wonderful book, Christianity is Mystical Fact, he follows the evolution of mysteries from the Egyptian mysteries to the pre-Socratic Greeks, to Plato, to Christ, and Christianity. Dr. Steiner is an evolutionist. He's a spiritual scientist, and evolution is not limited to the physical. Humanity evolves spiritually. Individuals gain new spiritual capabilities, and Christ assists humanity in this evolution. And Dr. Steiner stated that from 1933 on, almost 100 years ago, humanity has a unique opportunity to connect with Christ, but only if each individual makes the effort. In other words, we have to evolve ourselves. You could make the case that preparing individuals for encountering Christ is the main reason for Dr. Steiner's work. You could say his incarnation, from his philosophy of freedom to his last essay. Okay. This is a fascinating painting of the conversion of St. Paul. And with St. Paul, you have this wonderful understanding of catharsis to metanoia, and then oops, sorry, went too fast. We're having a slight problem here, pardon me. Oh, that's not where I want to go there. Saul, before he was Paul, was a devout intellectual Jew, and he knew intellectually that Jesus could not be the Christ. On the road to Damascus, he encountered the resurrected Christ, and he could not deny the experience. He realized he was completely wrong about the risen Christ. I love this section from Acts. As he neared Damascus on his journey, suddenly a light from heaven flashed around him. He fell to the ground, heard a voice say to him, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" He didn't say my followers. He said me. In other words, his followers and Christ are one. This is a beautiful depiction, I think. It shows how frightened and scared Saul was because he had no idea what was happening, and he was completely taken off his feet. Dr. Steiner states that this Pauline experience is available to modern humanity, which is an amazing statement. And he called the philosophy of freedom, quotation marks, a Pauline concept in the field of cognitive theory. So the philosophy of freedom will prepare individuals who have unprejudiced observations. The combination of the spiritual percept of Christ with the spiritual concept of Christ will lead to a beholding that will be the turning point of time for more and more individuals. And the philosophy of freedom is the modern road to Damascus. So we're going to go back to creation. But what we're going to do is we're going to not go to Genesis, because actually what John in his gospel describes happened before Genesis, the Logos. Very explicit. And pardon me because I use Logos instead of word, and I also use the eternal present. So in the beginning is the Logos, and the Logos is with God, and the Logos is God. The same was at the beginning with God. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him is life, and the life is the light of men. And the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. The beautiful beginning of St. John's Gospel, the first 18 verses are so majestic. I tried to find something that could be an image, a painting of creation. I couldn't find it. The best I came was the Chi Rho from the Book of Kells. This beautiful, beautiful illustration for St. Matthew, where the Chi, the Rho, and the iota are an abbreviation for Christ, Christos. The Annunciation. One of the most beautiful paintings by Fra Angelico again. And obviously, I'm totally biased towards Italian Renaissance painters. Clear. It's got everything. Upper left-hand side's the hands of the Father. The ray coming down to Mary's heart is filled with the Holy Spirit. Above that column is the Christ himself. And then, of course, the beautiful angel with the incredible gown with the fold in it so you can see the blue. And then over on the left, beginning of the whole story, Exodus from the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve. And then there's the answer, Mary's incredible yes, which set this all in motion. This is in the Prado in Spain. It's absolutely beautiful if you ever have a chance to see it. And then comes the incarnation. The Logos was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory. Glory is the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. This wonderful picture by Raphael of the Sistine Madonna, which ironically is not in the Sistine Chapel. It's in Dresden, but the name Sistine is connected with it. What an incredible display of beauty. And look how she's presenting him, but also look how solemn they are. Their eyes are so serious. And this is an interesting understanding that Raphael has of Mary and the Jesus child. Look at how loving this is. Again, Raphael, Madonna of the chair. Look at those chubby thighs. And look at St. John. Just wonderful, wonderful example of the divine. This is, I think, one of the most beautiful paintings I've ever seen. Botticelli's Virgin Child. Botticelli loved women. He understood the beauty of women, and he exemplified it by making them physically beautiful so you could see their inner beauty. Look at the detail. Look at that gown. But also, again, look at the solemn look on Mary's face. And look where her glance is going. If you go down to the child's wrist, there's a golden crown of thorns. Many of the artists of the Renaissance understood that when Mary said yes, it was not just to the incarnation, it was all the way to Golgotha. That makes her yes even more incomprehensible. And the child's yes, obvious, to do the will of the Lord. Then we move on to the baptism. And this wonderful scene by Verrocchio and Da Vinci, beautiful painting of St. John the Baptist baptizing Jesus and the Christ entering, and the Holy Spirit above. And this amazing statement by John. I saw the Spirit descending from heaven like a dove, and abode on him. And I knew him not, but he that sent me to baptize with water, the same said it unto me, upon whom thou shalt see the Spirit descending and remaining on him, the same is he which baptizeth with the Holy Ghost. And I saw and bear record that this is the Son of God. And the next day after John stood and two of his disciples, and looking upon Jesus as he walked, he said, Behold the Lamb of God. Just incredibly beautiful. So we have this amazing moment when the Christ being unites. And then I think the next moment that's stunning is Lazarus. And again, Henry Oswald Tanner, fascinating artist, African American, one of the first African Americans to make it into the Philadelphia School of Art, where they recognized his genius and suggested he go to Europe, and he went to France to continue his art. Look at the hands of Jesus there. Amazing. He cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. Snyder's very, very insightful about this John 11 Lazarus, because here's where everything changed. Here's where the Christ made manifest, and it became so apparent that it could not be denied. Even more apparent is the Transfiguration, this wonderful picture by Raphael, one of the last works he did. It's so explicit that this is a spiritual being, and that Moses and Elijah, who had long passed away, are present as well. These words are so beautiful and so poetic. And he was transfigured before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became white as light. And behold, there appeared to them Moses and Elijah talking with him. He was still speaking when, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them, and a voice from the cloud said, "This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him." When the disciples heard this, they fell on their faces and were terrified. But Jesus came, touched them, saying, "Rise and have no fear." I think it's fascinating how many times in a spiritual event, Jesus Christ will come up to the people and calm them down. Fear not. Have no fear. And here we have the Last Supper, wonderful painting by Leonardo da Vinci. And if you're ever in Milan, you should stop and see it because it's going away. It's fading. And he took bread, gave thanks, and broke it, and said, "This is my body, which is given to you. This do in remembrance of me." Likewise also the cup after supper, saying, "This cup is the New Testament in my blood, which is shed for you." And this is what we're to celebrate tomorrow, Holy Thursday. And then the Passion begins. This is, I think, an astounding understanding by Antonio Cesare. Ecce homo, behold the man. It's such an unusual perspective from behind, and Pilate pointing to him. And the irony, of course, is Pilate often speaks the truth. Behold the man. Very similar to what John the Baptist said. Again, Tissot. What a scene. The Christ falls, and his mother is just overcome with sorrow and grief. Her soul is going to be pierced by the sword. I think those hands reaching out are just so longing to help her son, to soothe him. And then the horror of all, the crucifixion, again by Fra Angelico. What's fascinating is when you combine some of Steiner's words with these type of paintings. The death of Jesus of Nazareth was the birth of cosmic love within the sphere of the earth, from the fifth gospel. Cosmic love. Unfortunately, we have to go through the crucifixion to get to the resurrection. It was necessary. Again, Dr. Steiner. But this suffering is transmuted into love, and much of the deepest love known in life is transmuted suffering of this kind. Deepest pain has the power to transform itself into love. So Christ, through his sacrificial love, transformed evil into good. This is the heart of the mystery of Golgotha. It keeps going with Steiner's emphasis. Thus, it will be indispensable to turn our attention in our time once more to this, the greatest question of mankind, inasmuch as the essence and meaning of the whole evolution of the earth lies in the mystery of Golgotha. The greatest question of mankind. Mystery of Golgotha by Steiner. This is the beautiful Trinity by Masaccio. And the first time I saw this, I actually thought that that was a nave, a section of the church behind this beautiful painting. And actually, it's Masaccio mastered how to do that when it was actually a flat painting. Look at the God the Father with his hands underneath Christ's arms, and look at the Holy Spirit above him. And Mary gesturing for us to look at this. Masaccio didn't call it crucifixion, he called it Trinity. The beautiful Santa Maria Novella in Firenze. This is a unique perspective by Tissot. What our Lord saw from the cross. So this is as if we're on the cross. This is what Jesus Christ saw looking down. Mary Magdalene in the front, Mary, his mother, and all the other people. I was amazed the first time I saw this. Again, from the mystery of Golgotha. For he not only placed his own destiny upon the earth in the mystery of Golgotha, but gave to the earth the mighty liberation of Pentecost, in that he promised to mankind and on earth the living spirit which could arise through his help from all things on the earth. Going back to one of my favorite paintings, the Fra Angelico. A human being looks backward through the course of time, back to the mystery of Golgotha. At the turning point of time, at the beginning of the Christian era, he beholds the mystery of Golgotha. Look at how beautiful that face is. And the crown of thorns are excruciating, with the blood dripping down. Yeats has a beautiful phrase called a terrible beauty. I think it's totally appropriate for this. And now we get to the resurrection, redemption. We made it. Christ in limbo. This is Fra Angelico, who is profound and has a sense of humor. He has Christ releasing these souls from limbo. Moses, John the Baptist, all those people are no longer constrained. They're freed. Christ has conquered death, sin, and evil. But look at what he did for Angelico. He has the door of limbo crushing a devil. And he has another devil gnashing his teeth. I think Fra Angelico was insightful, but like Steiner, had a sense of humor. Here's a beautiful, beautiful painting by Giordano. And again, Steiner on the resurrection. The mystery of Golgotha brought the turning point in that Christ consciously broke through the barriers of old efficacy, and then with his death and resurrection fulfilled the mystery wisdom of all time. The mystery wisdom of all time. Again, this beautiful Grunewald, resurrection of Christ. Wow. And this great quotation from Dr. Steiner. This is the great hour, the turning point of the world's timepiece, the hour where Christ lived on earth. It is accomplished. Staggering. And imagine that, more for Angelico. Women at the empty tomb. Why seek ye the living among the dead? He is not here, but he is risen. Remember how he spake unto you when he was yet in Galilee. Look at that look of the woman looking at the empty tomb. They didn't know. They didn't know. Here's one of the great works of art, again by Fra Angelico, Touch Me Not, with Mary Magdalene, thinking that this was the gardener. Great lines. Jesus saith unto her, Woman, why weepest thou? Whom seekest thou? She, supposing him to be the gardener, saith unto him, Sir, if thou art borne him hence, tell me where thou hast laid him, and I will take him away. Jesus saith unto her, Mary. She turned and saith unto him, Rabboni, which is to say, Master. Jesus saith unto her, Touch me not, for I am not yet ascended to my Father, but go to my brethren and say unto them, I ascend unto my Father and your Father, and to my God and your God. Look how detailed Fra Angelico is. I don't know if it's easy for you to see, but the little flowers with the dots of white and petals. And look at how beseeching Mary is. And she did not recognize him until he said her name. And then she turned. I think both inwardly and physically. The second coming. an amazing statement, absolutely amazing. Christ is always present, but he's in the spiritual world. We could reach him if we raise ourselves into that world. Appearance of Christ the etheric. What a statement. It's a declarative sentence. Christ is always present, but he's in the spiritual world. We could reach him if we raise ourselves into that world. This is an unknown author, icon of the Second Coming, somewhere around 1700. I just thought it was fascinating. So I think it's not clear if Da Vinci actually did Salvator Mundi. Whoever did it, it's a beautiful painting. Tendency is that it was Da Vinci. But the phrase, I am with you until the end of time, Matthew's last words, 28:20, are, I think, incredibly important for all of us. I am with you until the end of time. We have a loving Redeemer. He loves each and every one of us. And what's really good is that we have someone like Dr. Steiner to help us understand the absolute beauty of the mystery of Golgotha and how it is the turning point in time. So, Andrew, that's it. Glad to move on to the next phase. Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for your attention.
Thank you, too. My goodness. As usual, Neill. And I'm going to start us off with a question. Um, do you see a kind of relationship? You brought up both the conversion of Saul and Pontius Pilate. Were they not both initiates already? And then, I think Steiner mentioned something about them, but not together, but in separate talks, that each was an initiate. Obviously, Saul in the Jewish way of initiation, and Pilate in another, shall we say, pagan, maybe Roman way of initiation. Any thoughts on that, Neill, or have you not heard that from Steiner?
I'm not familiar with that. I find it fascinating. I do think that there had to be someone who was Judas.
Right.
Someone had to play that part in the drama. And there had to be someone who was Pilate. Someone had to play that part in the drama. And I think it's, quite frankly, I didn't realize it until I was doing this presentation, that the statement by John the Baptist and Pilate were almost exactly the same.
Isn't that right? Remarkable. Good.
Yeah, and that word behold is just endless in the King James Bible. I think it's literally hundreds of times. Unfortunately, in newer translations, they don't use that word. They use the word look or something like that. But I think behold is a critical word.
It is. Yeah.
And it's an experience. It's not look, it's behold. There's an epiphany. There's something of the spiritual nature happening, and we should behold it. But I think your question is a fascinating question. Relationship between Judas, because as Steiner points out, people didn't know who was Jesus Christ, because Jesus Christ would sometimes speak through the apostles, and they were mostly from Nazareth and had a Galilean accent. So it's like, everyone was from Queens, they all sound the same to the non-Queens person. So the reality is someone had to be Judas. Someone had to identify which one of them was Jesus Christ so that they could try him and kill him. And someone had to be Pilate, who had to be indifferent, even though his wife warned him, have nothing to do with this man. I dreamt of him in a dream. And Pilate was equivocating and would actually, again, spoke those beautiful words. What is truth? It's astounding that he has these great lines. Often happens in literature that, the dark people are given phenomenal lines.
Phenomenal. Not astounding. Okay.
Putting that, I don't want to turn you into a pauper.
Thank you. Okay, if you want to ask a question, just unmute yourself and jump in. Um, Speaking along those lines of Pontius Pilate, it's very interesting that when he brought Jesus Christ to all the people, he also brought another man. And he said, one of these we're going to crucify, the other one we're going to let go. Which one do you want to be let go? And that was Barabbas. And I didn't come up with this. I read this, and I think it's probably true. It's very fascinating that um, the tradition at that time for bringing an animal to be put to death in a sacrifice was that you brought two of them,
Hmm.
and the priest would pick one, and the other one you would let go in the wilderness. And typically they were goats. So that's where the word scapegoat
Huh.
comes from. It's the one that's let go
Hmm.
in the wilderness.
Hmm.
Anybody have another question?
I have a comment.
Yes, Maria.
Okay. Um, I have a comment about, because you brought up now the pilot and his proposition, whom do you want to free? Because there was a custom that on the occasion of Passover, one of the prisoners could be let free. And the choice was between Barabbas and Jesus, from the King of the Jews. But Bar Abbas means also the son of the father.
Hmm.
Okay, Bar Abbas. So that we should just be aware of the symbolism. It's very symbolic. Another comment I will make is, because it is really related to the, but first, thank you, Neill, for this presentation and the beautiful pictures you presented. I was fascinated by James Tissot and myself, because he underwent conversion, and when he was probably 40 something, and he painted 350 images to the New Testament and maybe 20 or 30 to the Old Testament. So he changed his career from painting beautiful ladies, beautiful dresses, into religious, and he made few trips to the Holy Land. So that's one comment, and it's interesting that the series, I think it had one exhibition in France, but the Brooklyn Museum, all 350 pictures plus the Old Testament collection. So this is all in New York City. They purchased he died in 1902, so it was at the last at the end of 19th century. But what the other comment I want to make to the sequence of you presented from the Genesis now to the second coming, but they're very important. Why, I think we can wonder why Steiner chose the term, the mystery of Golgotha, because there's something mysterious happening at that time of death. And I think I am at least aware that there's, because I read it in Valentin Tomberg and Judith von Halen Steiner, there is a new initiation Christ that was happening and given to us. The 7 steps of initiation, and begins with washing of the feet, crowning with a crown of thorns, then scourging, crucifixion, death, and then entombing. And those are stupendous symbolic events. And so this is what I think one of the quotes you, Neill, you presented from Steiner is that this is the new initiation. Steiner or Christ shows us, in a way, it's a manifestation of the depth of the mystery of overcoming death. That's how I would say. And I don't know what other explanation we would have why Steiner coined the term mystery of Golgotha, right? So the turning point was the sacrificial death, the moment when the earth received the blood. Then everything changed for the earth and for humanity. So, but that's, I'm sorry, I don't have a question, but the underlying question is why, what is the mystery behind the term, the mystery of Golgotha, right?
That's very interesting. Thank you. But the word mystery has a root, miste, which has to deal with basically initiation. So, and it's a term that's used in many religions and it's very strong in Christianity. We refer constantly to mystery, and in the Rosary, the mysteries, a collection of astonishing events. And this concept of what is the modern initiation is what Dr. Steiner has brought to the fore. And I'm sorry for overemphasizing this, but Dr. Steiner emphasizes the philosophy of freedom, that is a Pauline way of understanding the etheric Christ. And I know it's a heavy chore. I know it's hard. I know it seems so philosophic. However, Dr. Steiner constantly referred to it his whole life. And he connects the two, I think, seamlessly. The Christ impulse with this unprejudiced observation, sense-free thinking. And I think we can all get a glimpse of that. And I think when we have great artists, we can perceive that they are giving us an experience also, especially the great ones such as Raphael, etc. So it is a mystery, but it's not a mystery as in who did it. It's not a mystery as, was it, Dr. Plum in the library. There's nothing to do with that at all. Nothing wrong against Dr. Plum.
Neill, if I might add to what you just said, the mystery of Golgotha happened in the physical. It had to come to the physical. Therefore, it had to be in time as we know time. And how do you make a moment that is eternal into something that is temporal? That's a mystery as well. And I think today, having a new mystery available to us, Christ in the etheric, and this doesn't take place in an event. It began at a certain time, but it's a continual, whatever you call it. So we have to have a new word. It doesn't really exist. It's an event that's occurring over centuries.
Impulse. Impulse is the phrase Dr. Steiner often uses. The Christ impulse.
I don't know if that helps you, Maria, with what you were bringing, but it's a very good question, I think, about what all does it mean to be a mystery, and then on Golgotha or upon Golgotha. And then a lot of people have wondered about the turning point of time or the turning point in time. Any other questions or thoughts? There was somebody who had a hand up and it's now down.
Oh, that was me.
Oh, did you have a question, Steve, still, or is it gone?
Yeah, I do. I have a question and I have an observation too I'd like to make.
Right.
Earlier, Maria mentioned 7 steps. Is that, Are those steps mentioned in any one of Dr. Steiner's works at all?
Yes, yes. You'll
Which
find
one?
several. Well, there's one about um, Rosicrucian esotericism. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's name, I don't know the GA number offhand, but
That's
he
okay.
describes the 7 steps of the Christian initiation, and then um, brings up the Rosicrucian 7 steps as in the course of evolution, where humanity was in the 13th, 14th, 15th century, that this new form of initiation was needed.
Hmm.
And now he doesn't quite come out and say it that I know of. Maybe somebody can correct me, but I think he hints at the need for a new initiation for today. And some have thought what he brought as the first and was to have been second and third classes was to have been that. But, as we know, he died before bringing the second and third classes.
I see. Great. Yeah. I'm going to change this over to different audio method here. One moment. I think this is the one here.
Steve, are you trying to get your audio to work so you can ask something more? Because we hear you fine.
Yeah, I wanted to change the audio over to a different source here real quick, but my PC is moving kind of slow.
Can I go to somebody else and
Sure,
have you
of course. Yes,
mute
please do.
yourself and figure it out? Okay.
Sure.
And we'll come back to you. Robin.
So one comment I also wanted to make, this came up in some studies that the Christian community, the Chicago branch, has brought about. The book called Meditation by Friedrich Rittlemeyer also includes all of those 7 steps in it. That we can, in this new initiation, it talks about the background as well as how we can work with those. And that's something, for the Easter time frame was given to us as something we could look at. But one thing I would ask if Neill can bring back up his slide deck real quick. And it was where Mary Magdalene wanted to touch Christ in the garden.
Oh, yeah, the Touch Me Not by Fra Angelico. Can you do
Yes.
that?
Yep. So let me share that. Hold on a second.
And while you're doing that, Robin, are you going to say it also could be translated, don't cling to me physically?
Mhm.
It could be. That's not where I was going. I was
Ah,
going in, and this is based upon something my husband happened to share just a second ago with me. But I mean, look at the way that the tomb, look at those curves
right.
in that. You know, it's interesting that there is a very esoteric meaning in the way that the tomb is presented. If you think of even some of the curves that are in the Goetheanum, and that was quite, I don't know, impactful as to how those were. Doesn't look like what we would consider the tomb, except of course the door is pretty 90-degree angle-ish, but everything else around it, and maybe that is a kind of the old versus the new. I don't know.
Robin, by the way, there's a note to you in the chat asking if you could type in the name of the book and by whom. Riddlemeyer, I think you said.
I did. I will get it. It's just real simple. It's called Meditation.
Oh, that's quite simple. Yep.
It doesn't, it's his book on meditation. So if you look up, and I'll try to find the right spelling from Riddlemeyer and I'll put it in the chat in the meantime.
2 more things about this. I mentioned one already. There have been a number of both anthroposophical and non-anthroposophical people who have said that the Greek words there, um, it looks like "touch me not." It definitely looks like that. Not, but I guess it also could mean "don't cling to me."
Mm.
And what some have interpreted that is she's looking for him physically in the tomb. And then this turning around that Neill said is also, if you go into the Old Testament, all those, don't turn around or seeing God from behind. Now she can turn around. Something has changed.
John, the 8 o'clock movie.
John, did you have something to add to that? Or
Yeah, I sort of a question. I've often thought about the two that were crucified also, along with the Christ. And if you had any thoughts about that, many people now are translating this not as thieves, but as revolutionaries, not thieves at all. And they were, out to change society in their own ways. And then some people say that one was more like Lucifer and one was more like Ahriman. And I don't know if you have any thoughts about that. Have you heard that?
Neill, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. So yes, actually, a number of Christian groups have changed it to revolutionaries. I've often thought I think that criminals was more apt from the way they just talked, the conversations, the words around them. They seemed like thugs to me. They did not seem like they had some great ideal that they were willing to die for, to get rid of the Romans or anything like that. But that's just my own personal bias. I don't recall Dr. Steiner ever stating one way or the other anything about it. But it has become quite contemporary to use that phraseology, revolutionaries.
May I ask you to, can you put the picture just back, or you don't even have to put it back. I just would say one word about it. Um,
Sorry.
Someone just told me this week, so I don't have this exactly right, that in Hebrew, the fourth letter means door.
Hmm.
So there's something about fourness, and I might not have noticed it at first, but that's a pretty strong. We're interested in all the curves around it, but that black slab is a pretty strong and maybe something earthbound or even under earthbound about fourness.
Mm.
While we're there, if it's okay, I've been thinking about these paintings or starting to feel these paintings. Uh, Andrew mentioned earlier this mystery of bringing something eternal into a moment or into space and time. I suppose you could say that mystery could be spoken of in relationship to painting as well. It's doing this something like that. And in a way, each painting is like a mystery in time. And also the the transformations through painting. And one painting in particular, I've been thinking about in your sequence. You know, the very early ones with the golden background and these holy figures. And in a way, the closest that I remember you showing to that was that icon. But the one I'm thinking about is a kind of, and then come these, Fra Angelico is already showing the landscape around the earthly picture. But the Masaccio, is there a way you could show that one? The the Holy Trinity in the this. So it happens, Neill, at the time that I met you, when you were in the Waldorf Institute, I was in 12th grade. And during that year, among other things, we studied projective geometry. And folks may know that the artists were dealing with projective geometry before the mathematicians formalized it hundreds of years later. And Neill, you mentioned looking at this painting and experiencing while you're in the church that the space of the church is continuing in it. And as far as I know, this is the first painting that fully uses this perspective method that the artists and architects and Brunelleschi around Florence were developing before the mathematicians were. And one of the ways projective geometry, as folks may know, is so full of riches. You can see you can get a feel for a little bit of the technique if you look at the roof there with the lines that feel quite naturally to go in, but they're actually, in terms of technique, converging into a single, what the artist would call vanishing point. And just two things about that. To do that is bringing, if you imagine those lines in the ceiling as parallel lines going on, and we would say that they go on forever and never meet. So to put it into space and time in a painting, you bring that in projective geometry, the way it's said is, well, they meet at infinity. They go on forever. And if you want to have no exceptions, then you have to say, well, they meet at infinity. And so this painter has brought the infinite, mathematically speaking, on onto the painting,
Right.
into our space.
Joseph, thank you. That's great. Yeah, there's quite a bit in what you said, also about the painter. 1425, bringing this about well ahead of his time with perspective that comes, 30 years later, 50 years later. Well, let's go on to Ellen. You want to come off of mute, Ellen? Thanks.
Thanks, Andrew. And thank you, Andrew, for bringing Neill. Thank you, Neill, so much. This was a wonderful presentation. Having taught history through art in the Waldorf High School, I was thrilled to see some of my favorite paintings presented in this way. And one of them is the Grunewald altarpiece, the Isenheim altarpiece. And I just wanted to mention that if you see a close-up of this part of the altarpiece, I mean, the whole thing is just incredible. But this particular panel, a close-up of this one shows that the light is coming from the Christ. It is not coming from outside. The light that is falling on the soldiers, and in a close-up, you can see it just gleaming, but also that's coming out of the stigmata and out of his face, out of his eyes, out of his head. That light, that luminous, amazingly luminous light is not coming from outside. It's coming from within. And it just reminds me every time of the Pauline words, not I, but the Christ in me. So thank you. Thank you for showing that.
Thank you, Ella. That was a wonderful comment. Thank you. All right.
Yeah, I want to say one or two words about this amazing painting. And a good friend of mine and many people on the phone, Claire Blatchford, took this very, very seriously. And she called her book Turning. And the core of what she received was that the most important moment was when Jesus said to Mary, Mary. In other words, he speaks to us, and she, Mary Magdalene, had an inward turn. And that is the metaphor or the reality of Claire writing down these beautiful internal experiences where she turned, she listened. I love that phrase in the Bible, if you hear my voice, harden not your heart. And I argue that most of us as modern people have hard hearts. Hard. And Claire really did it. If you have not read it, I would strongly advise, if you have the time, Claire Blatchford's Turning. It's just a wonderful book.
Yeah. Any more questions? If not, I will offer up one last thought here for Neill. Neill, you talked from the fifth gospel about the transformation of pain into love. And of course, I think we can use the word agape as opposed to eros or philia love. Greeks had these three different types of love, and they've all been part of our human evolution of consciousness, human evolution of love, from the blood, on up to agape. It raised a question for me, which I'm sharing right now. I do not have the answer, but the mission that the individual Mani, who was Parsifal, took on is to deal with evil and to transform evil. And I wonder if there's a relationship here of the transformation of pain to love, that there will be a transformation of evil to something we don't yet know what it is.
I would say yes to that. And Dr. Steiner uses pain, but he also uses suffering.
Offering.
And there's a big difference between the two, right? And I'm going to give you an image that was very hard for me and is still hard for me to this day. I knew this lovely, lovely, very meek, kind Jesuit, and which is almost a contradiction in terms, a meek and kind Jesuit. They're usually very intellectual, and they are the smartest boy in the class. And this person was almost the exact opposite of that. And he said, I know this is hard. I know it's hard to comprehend Christ's love. But we have to imagine that Christ embraces Hitler. And I went, what? He said, I know it's hard. He says, I have the hardest time with it. And I think it's going the path that you're going down, Andrew, that we have to bear witness to evil. We do not mean we don't have to be evil, but we have to, just as bearing witness is beautiful in the sense of love, that John bore witness, yes, to this incarnation of the Logos. But you also have to bear witness to the crucifixion, which is really hard, and pain and suffering. And I think, to quote Mother Teresa, I think the best place to start is our own families, and especially at holiday times. Being a human being is a difficult task, and everyone has people to whom they're related or know that are suffering. It's just, this is the human lot. We all said yes to this. We said, I want to be part, yes, and maybe unconscious, who knows? But part of it is dealing with pain and suffering and evil. And that's really hard. And it's obvious we can't do it by ourselves. I think it's self-evident. We need grace. We need Christ. We need Mary. We need Michael. We need Dr. Steiner, who is, there is a section where Dr. Steiner in the fifth gospel speaks about the immense pain that Jesus went through when realizing that no one had ears to hear him. And we just read this a few nights ago, and it struck us that it was really autobiographical by Dr. Steiner. I mean, it was not that he could understand Jesus' suffering. He lived through the exact same, will someone ask me a question about the second coming of Christ? I have to wait until someone asks. I think it must have been very painful to be Dr. Steiner. Yet, in spite of that, he had this wonderful, almost adolescent sense of humor. And we can never forget that wonderful depiction of mirth in the beautiful statue. We've got to remember that Dr. Steiner was a real person, and he had a great sense of humor. He was funny. And I think that's so important. I dislike the pictures that make him all look like a funeral director. I just think that's just sad. Come on. He was in a certain sense a regular person who enjoyed life and had a good sense of humor. So that's a roundabout answer, Andrew.
It is, but that's great. Joyce, would you come off of mute and essentially read what you put into the chat for us? That's wonderful.
I could do that. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you, Joyce. It's
Good, and
beautiful.
thank you all. This is from the Christian Community Service, and it can be a little jarring when you first hear the tense of I guess it's the verb. And to me, it means something continuous. It's happened, it is happening, and it will continue to happen. And it's as the chalice is held up during communion, and it's, may the fragrance ascend as this God-willed being is descended. So to me, it's just a continuous. So when we talk about a moment in time, it expands it for me, that it goes with so many of the images, I think, Neill, that you brought, that I will be with you forever. So it's a process that has started and will continue. That's all I had to say.
Thank you so much, Joyce. And as you probably know, fragrance, odor, is of the highest, the most spiritual of the senses. It's in the physical. It is of the warmth. So that's, and of course, the warmth, that there we have the sun. Anyhow, Neill, I want to also give my great appreciation to you as we close this up. Thank you for that. I hope everyone has a very meaningful Easter ahead, and you can carry this festival deep in your hearts. So again, thank you, Neill.
Andrew,
Yes, Julie?
this is Julie. I don't know how to raise my hand, but I want to say it's been such a joy to see your smile and your warmth, and this is same for Neill's offering. His devotion is just lovely to share. Thank you.
Thanks for saying that, Julie. Yes, I agree. He's a special man. So, all right, everyone. Thank you. And these happen every first Wednesday of every month at this time. And if you're not on our mailing list and found out about this some other way, and you would like to know about future ones, let me know so I can put you on the mailing list. Yes, I am Andrew Linnell with a J in the front of it at gmail.com. So jandrewlinnell at gmail.com. And just let me know and I will add you to the list if you're not on our list. So again, thank you all and good night and happy Easter to all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Very good.
Thank you.
Happy Easter, everyone.
Thank
Have a great
you.
rest of the week.
Bye-bye.